and love family. How is everyone doing? Thank you all for joining us on another edition of the Rand Book Club, Resurgence of the African Mind, where we seek to liberate African minds by reading one unit of work at a time. We are happy to be back with another video. I'm happy to be here with this illustrious, wonderful panel. I am Lady Dr.maat.msu Speaks, also known as Alima Njai, author of Perception of a Misplaced African, Volume 1, which you can pick up at www.lady.maat.msu.com. I am happy to be here tonight, ready to get into the discussion of what this great next book is going to be. We're going to let the panel introduce themselves. Peace and love.
Peace and love, family. This is your sister, Dr. Maat. Happy to be on the panel. We are reading Breaking the Chains of Psychological Slavery. This is going to be tonight we're going to discuss the second half of part 1. The week before last, we were able to discuss part 1, which talked about how we view work and leadership and property due to the legacy of slavery. And so tonight we will be discussing the rest of part 1, or the remainder of part 1. I'm happy to be on the panel. I'm going to go ahead and pass the mic to Brother Kanoum.
Thank you. It is a pleasure to be part of the resurgence of the African mind. I thank you for allowing me to participate in this. And again, this is such a great work. Any work by Dr. Naim Akbar is worth reading. If you don't have any of these books in your library now, buy them today, at the latest tomorrow. Again, Breaking the Chains of Psychological Slavery is one of the great works that will free the African mind and help us to realize that we are one people and we have one goal, and that's African independence.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I agree with you, brother. I have a bunch of his books on my shelf. Know Thyself, Community of Self, Visions, even Visions for Black Men. I have that on my bookshelf. And so I agree 100% with you that if you don't have the book family, if you don't have any books by Dr. Naim Akbar, it's a great investment. So peace to everyone in the sound of my voice. I see brothers and sisters coming in. Brother Adolfo, he's in. Brother Eric, peace to you, brother. They're saying peace to you, Brother Kanoum. Family, share this link. I want to be able to log on, and we have hundreds of folks in the chat room, getting this good information, because that's what the Rand Book Club is all about, resurging of the African mind. So we talk about nation building, but we can't nation build until we free our minds. And that's why we're reading the book, Breaking the Chains of Psychological Slavery. We can't build a nation with folks who aren't mentally liberated. Okay. Yes. Absolutely. And so last week, we discussed the first part, psychological legacy of slavery. And in that particular discussion, we talked about how we view work, how we view leadership, how we view property, how we view, it says, the clown, how we view our personal inferiority due to slavery. And so today we're going to continue that conversation. Brother Kanoum, did you want to add anything on about last week, or like recap in any way, or do you want to just move forward?
No, we can move forward. That's fine with me.
Okay, cool.
Week was excellent.
Yes. So peace to you, brother. Real Truth Power. Peace to you, brother Sun Lion. All right. So tonight we're going to discuss community division. That was a big one, Brother Kanoum, when I read this. And so in this particular subsection, Dr. Naim Akbar, and I'm going to read the first little paragraph. He says, one of the most serious disturbances of community advancement from coming from slavery experience is disunity. And we talk about that all the time, Brother Kanoum, how we're not unified. And how and the need for a Black united front. So anyway, he says that one of the most serious disturbances of community advancement coming from the slavery experience is disunity or community division. The age-old pattern of divide and conquer was utilized along with so many tricks in order to destroy African American community life. Wedges of division were thrown among the slaves in order to ensure that the possibility for united efforts would be nearly impossible. The slave makers were fully aware that a disunited community would be easy prey for the continued control by the master. Therefore, all kinds of devices were utilized in order to make sure that the slaves would not be able to come together. So, what are those devices? Okay, so now he's going into the Willie Lynch letter, and he's saying that Willie Lynch stood on the bank of James River in 1712, and during that time, he outlined a lot of differences that slave masters could use in order to divide us. And we all know that that the Willie Lynch letter or the Willie Lynch story. Also, I heard something in the background, Brother Kaneem. But we already know that the Willie Lynch letter, or Willie Lynch story, is a myth. I remember back in the day, Brother Kaneem, when Minister Farrakhan started talking about Willie Lynch, and so people thought that Willie Lynch was a real person. And
Yes.
so we found out years later that Willie Lynch, isn't or wasn't a real person, but it's a myth. And it's a story that we can actually learn from,
Yes.
And so even though he's not a real person or he's not a historical figure, we could definitely still learn something from the so-called letter that was put out there. And in this so-called letter, he outlined differences amongst the enslaved that could be used to divide the enslaved Africans, or sometimes I call them the captives, or
Yes.
African captives. And some of those differences were age, color of shade, intelligence, size, sex, size of plantation, status on the plantation, attitude of owners, whether the slaves live in the valley or on the hill, east, west, north, south, have fine hair or coarse hair, tall or short. He said, put the old against the young against the old, put the dark-skinned slaves against the light-skinned slaves, and the light-skinned slaves against the dark skins. And he said that we have to ensure that our slaves, he said, trust us and depend only on us and love us and respect only us. And so then he also gets it, Dr. Naeem Akbar begins talking about the division amongst the workers. So, you cause division between, the house workers and the field workers. Absolutely. And so,
Mhm.
and so he talked about all of these different differences that could be used to divide us. And Brother Kaneem, when I was reading this today, I couldn't help but to think about things that still divide us.
Yes.
It's like we have a gender war right now. So you have the men against the women. So, you got women who are now subscribing to feminism, and they're saying they're female centered instead of being family centered. We still have the light skin, dark skin thing going on. Then you have the older elders don't want to listen to the younger folks, and the younger folks don't want to listen to this. And then you got folks saying, well, I'm from the East Coast, I'm from the West Coast. So these things that he describes in this letter that was supposedly or allegedly written in 1712, we still see that in 2020. We still hear it. We still experience these things in 2020. What do you want to add to that, Brother Canoe?
And I'll just plus one what you're saying. It is the same master that is trying to divide us the exact same way. How can in African culture there's no such thing as the difference, the fighting of African men and African women. It's always community and working together. Just like you said about Dr. Naeem Akbar's book, the community of self. It's just a concept that is African, and we've accepted this crazy colonizer idea. Also, to take it to the next level, when you study the different regions of Africa, the colonizers separated the Tutsi from the Hutu. In every region of Africa you go through, you see how the colonizer gives either preferential status, gives them money, or gives them a certain clout so that they can rule over the other African, making sure that the African is divided. It's the exact same thing. Is that they create a community of division, and we buy into it every generation.
Every generation. And so so I was sitting here thinking, like, I know at the end of the chapter, Dr. Naeem Akbar says, look, I'm not making excuses. He says, but I want us to recognize these things so that we can address them, heal from them, and advance. And so, I couldn't agree more. Like you said, it's the same thing generation after generation. And so it's imperative that we break these chains, and that we stop perpetuating, these ideas. He goes on to say that, today our differences are, and where are we? I'm trying to look. He says, so today we have he said today our differences are, fraternities, sororities, schools,
Yes.
churches, white collar, blue collar. I'm a Republican. No, no, no. I'm a Democrat. I live in this neighborhood, that neighborhood, oh, I have this,
Yes.
then we have our social economic status, so
Yes.
I make this amount of money. So I'm able to live here. And these people, they live over there due to their social economic status. And so, like you said, we're still divided in 2020. And so we had to rid ourselves of what Dr. Naeem Akbar calls the plantation ghosts.
Yes. The
Yeah,
Ghost of the Plantation.
the
What
goals
the?
of the plantation. And so, yeah, I mean, so that was that particular subsection. And then he gets into family. And he
Yes.
talks about how the family is divided. And he says that probably the most serious effect of all was the impact that slavery had on the African American family.
Family.
Right. And he says that family is the very foundation of a healthy, constructive, personal, and community life. Without a strong family, individual life and community life are likely to become very unstable. The destruction or damage to the African American was accomplished by destroying marriage, fatherhood, and motherhood.
Motherhood.
Absolutely. So go ahead and speak to that, Brother Canoe.
There's just so much to that. When we lived in the 1960s and the 1950s and the 1940s and before that, we had no choice but to work together as a family. We had no choice. But now that we have been integrated into American society, now the father can be on his own, the mother can be on his own, and as a matter of fact, we'll talk about the stereotype of the strong black woman. You never
Mm,
hear the strong. You never hear the strong independent Asian woman. You never hear the strong independent Muslim woman. But the politics and the social are attacking the black woman to be strong and independent from the black man. So they
absolutely.
are purposely dividing the family, and we must reject all those ideas that we receive from outside and from school and from everywhere else that's destroying our family. We have to bring our families back together and reject, the American way or whatever way they're calling.
Absolutely. And the sisters got to realize that
Yeah,
feminism thing is not our I'm not going to act
it
as
is
if
not
gender issues don't exist. But
true. True.
Dr. Clenora Hudson Weems tells us in Africana womanism that we have to prioritize, and our priority should be racism, classism. Then we could get into all of the gender stuff, right?
Yes.
But
Why?
she tells us that we need to strive as African women, black women. We need to strive to be family centered. So we need to
First.
be the best version of ourselves for ourselves, absolutely. But we need to be the best version of ourselves for our husbands, right? Our counterparts, our children, our family, our community. You get what I'm saying? And so
Absolutely.
absolutely. So like you said, they never lift up the strong black Jewish woman. No, 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 no,
Right.
no. They don't do that. They don't do that with the Asian woman, and like you said, they don't do that. They don't even do that in the Hispanic community. It's not.
Exactly.
It's only in our community that they prop up the strong black woman, and she's invincible, and she doesn't need her man. She could do it by herself, and it's only in our community. And we see how that has hurt our community.
Right. It has literally decimated our community. And once you attack the woman, you've destroyed the family. And then, like you said, later on in the chapter, he says the African American man was evaluated by his ability to do strenuous work and to produce children. He was viewed as the slave master, as a stud, and a workhorse. How is that any different than the NFL and the NBA?
I thought about that.
How is that any different? If you don't run fast enough, well, I want to use the N word. If you don't run fast enough, you don't jump fast enough, you cannot play for us. If you're not stronger, if you don't run that 40 in under 4 seconds, you're not going to play for us. So we are still under that subjugation, but we must recognize that subjugation that we're under and break free from it. Guess what? Play for the NFL. I've got no problem with that. Play for the NBA. I have no problem with that. But realize how important how you respond and how you act are as an NBA player or as a football player for the African family.
Absolutely. I mean, I couldn't agree with you more. And I'm actually on the page that you're talking about where it says that African American men were evaluated. So I'm
Mhm.
looking at that. Yeah, they were viewed, as a workhorse, as a stud. And like you said, we still see that in sports. And it said right here, this was key. This is something key that I read. He says African American manhood
Say it
was
again.
defined by his ability to impregnate a woman and the
Yes.
magnitude of his physical strength. And we still see that
Today.
today. You know, you
Yes.
have a lot of brothers who will say, you know, and I don't want to call any names because there's some of them in my family. You know, I got 15 kids. I have
Right.
5 children. And so it's this pride thing, you know, and that, you know, they define their manhood, you know, by the ability to impregnate somebody, you
But
know.
that's because they stole our culture from us. We have
Absolutely.
adopted the false culture that America has put upon us about being a stud or being independent and all those other things, and we've accepted it. And that's why we do those things. We have to take our psychology back. Period. Go ahead, go ahead.
No, absolutely. I mean, I couldn't agree with you more. And so, you know, he says that, you know, he says the virtues of being able to protect, support, and provide for one's offspring, which is the
Mhm.
cornerstone of true fatherhood, were not considered the mark of a man on the plantation. And like I said, we see that today. You know, we see that today, brothers running around. I got 10 kids, I got 5 kids, I got 10 baby mamas, you know, 5 baby mamas, and you know, and it's this pride thing. But like you said, it boils down to the fact that we, you know, we haven't controlled the culture. We haven't controlled the, you know, we don't control the culture. You don't control the definitions, you know, the standards, the expectations. And so, like you said, we've taken on and adopted, you know, their culture. And it says right here today in the African American communities around America, we carry the mark of the strong arm stud from slavery. He occurs as the modern day pimp or the
Yeah.
man who delights in leaving neglected babies dispersed around town. So think about the music, brother Kanoom, that's
Mhm.
out there on the market. You know, it's music that promotes promiscuity, music that
Yeah.
promotes I'm the man because I have 10 women behind me dancing. You know
Yes.
what I mean? And so,
Yes.
you know, and the sad part is when you have young men who are growing up without fathers in the household, they tend to draw, you know, they tend to take those definitions and they think that
Yeah.
that is manhood. They adopt those definitions of manhood when they don't have a father, you
Right.
know,
We
in the
see it on
household.
TV. We see it on TV so much we assume that that's what being a man is. What
Mhm.
if I don't drive the latest car, if I don't have the 22-inch rims, no, you got to have 25-inch rims, then you're a man. If you have this type of car, if you have this many women, then you're a man. We take that because we see it on TV all day, every day.
Absolutely. And I'm just
Mhm.
and I know we're talking about the men, but I mean we could talk about the women too.
Women as
You got
well.
a lot of
Yeah.
these girls who are running around emulating Cardi Bird. That's what I call a Cardi Bird. So you got women running around trying to emulate Cardi Bird or Nikki. I call her Nikki Facade. So those
Yeah.
are my names. So Nikki Facade and Cardi Bird have now become the definition of a woman. You know,
Yes.
like literally. So you have young girls who are emulating Cardi Bird and Nikki Facade. So they're going out. You see them with the long tracks hanging down the back,
That's right.
and then
You're
you know
right.
they're running out here getting the fake breasts and the fake butts and all kinds of stuff
Wow.
because now that has become their definition for womanhood, you
Yes.
know. And see, and that's what happens when we don't have our rites of passage. I'm going to bring a brother on probably this week or next week. His name is Dr. Mukasa Africa, and he
Okay.
wrote his dissertation on rites of passage. And so we're going to talk
That'd
about
be
that and
great.
why it's very important that we reinstate those systems. Because remember, in those systems, you were taught how to be a man, you were taught how to be a woman, and remember, you couldn't operate in society as a man or as a woman if you didn't go through these, if you didn't
Right.
graduate or go through
Passage.
these rites of passage.
That's
And
right.
so, and we need to re-implement that. I think that a part of our educational process, and I just had a conversation family with Mama Ya Barudi. So please go back into the archives and check that out. But she and I we both were saying that our educational process should also entail manhood training,
Yes.
womanhood training. We don't have that. We typically go through K through 12, we get out of high school, and then we move to college, we turn 18, and they say you're a man or you're a woman. But that educational process should also encompass, you know, manhood training, womanhood training, how to treat the opposite sex, how to
Yeah.
be compatible for the opposite sex. That should all be a part of our educational process.
I highly recommend. I watched that interview, and that was excellent. That
Oh
was
yeah.
very excellent, and that ties into the end of this section where it says just like what you're talking about. If we understand the historical origin of these roles and patterns, then perhaps we will refuse to play them any longer.
Mm,
So it's time
mm.
for us to stop buying into the roles that they give us, the games that they give us, and to redefine ourselves as Africans. It's time to redefine ourselves.
Hmm. And looking and redefining ourselves, I'm looking at the Nguzo Saba on on my wall, and you have Kuji Chagalia, self determination, and he says that is to define ourselves, name ourselves, create for ourselves, and speak for ourselves, and
Yeah,
that's what we should be doing. That's what
yeah,
we should be doing. Absolutely, I couldn't agree with you more, brother.
awesome, awesome.
So the last section in this particular part is color discrimination. And so he talks about skin color and how skin color became the code for social position. And he says, of course, those slaves who most closely resembled their slave masters in color, the more
Mhm.
positive traits were assigned to them. And so immediately, Brother Kanoum, when I read that, I thought about the movies and how typically in the movies, the dark skinned person was always depicted as either the thug,
Yep,
the loudmouth person, the person that was out of control, the ugly person, and then the light skin girl was always the it was the girl that all the guys wanted. I'm thinking about even School Days. Remember with Spike Lee
yep,
and how
yep,
Teacher
yep.
Campbell was the light skinned girl, and it was the whole dark skinned girl, light skinned girl, robbery. But
You
we
still
see.
see those things today in commercials. If you see, if you, I rarely watch TV, but when I turn on the TV commercials, or you see the ones that pop up like in YouTube and stuff, you see the exact same thing going on today. They highly they like the light skinned girls or the ones that are mixed. You'll see those a lot more. So it's the same thing going on today.
Absolutely. And then if you think about the music, and actually my sons brought that to my attention. In the
Yeah.
music, they say that, I want the biracial girl or the mixed girl or the light girl. And I mean, and it was in our music too. I can't lie. Like in the 90s, you did hear it, but you hear it a whole lot in today's music. They promote that, so and so with the pretty hair, and I need to,
Oh.
and I know Lil Wayne was infamous for
Mhm.
for promoting colorism and what they call texturism in his music.
Mhm.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I also thought about Kelly Rowland. I don't know if you remember Beyonce's father, Knowles. I forgot his first name, but Mr. Knowles came out and he said that Kelly Rowland's career didn't go as far as Beyonce's career because he said that she was too dark. And people got upset.
Wow.
People got upset when he put that. Matthew Knowles, that's his name.
Okay.
So when Matthew Knowles put that out there, people got upset about his comment, but it's the truth. He
Yeah.
said Kelly
That's so
Rowland. He
cool.
said, yeah, he said Kelly Rowland would have never been a star as big as Beyonce. He said because she was too dark. And Hollywood is full of colorism.
Yes.
You
Yes.
know,
Racism and colorism.
Absolutely. So he said she would have never made it. So we see these things play out in Hollywood. We see these things play out, in the music industry. And I was sitting here thinking about the new documentary that came out with Madam C.J. Walker, the Netflix series.
Mhm.
Remember, they had that whole dark skin, light skin thing played out with her and the other sister Annie Turbo, who
Okay.
was So it was like that played out there. They were trying to say that it was a feud that was going on between the two, but that was
Right.
fictitious. That didn't happen. But the point that I'm trying to make is that you definitely see it played out. You definitely see it played out in the series.
Yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. So he says that the African's black skin was considered as evidence for his cursed state to serve as a slave. So it
Mhm.
says, therefore, dark skin color became equated with the reason for slavery. The skin color of the slave became associated with other kinds of subhuman traits. On the other hand, the slave master's pale skin became equated with supernatural human traits. In fact, God, all of the saints and the entire heavenly host became identified with the pale skin.
All right now.
Do you want to build on? Do you want to build on that, brother Canoe?
Oh, I can say so much about that. There's so much I can say. Um, he's going to get into it later on in the book, so we'll just deal with that later because that's religious. That's there's a lot to that. There's a lot to that one, but it's still the same thing. It's colorism. Uh, where the lighter skin you are, the holier you supposedly are.
Yeah, yeah.
It's just ridiculous, you know. And again, once your mind is set free from all this insanity, you begin to see how crazy the world is. And you might think you're crazy, but you're not. You've finally become sane because all this stuff is just crazy. It's just crazy. And
It's
we think
madness. It's
it's mad.
madness.
Right.
Yeah.
And I have friends and people I know, let me say, people I know in Brazil, they're dealing with the same thing. People in UK, they're dealing with the exact same thing. People all over the globe that are African are dealing with the exact same thing because we have to free our minds from this insanity.
Absolutely. I
Um,
mean, absolutely. And then look, at the end of this section, he says, following the social movements of the 60s, another limb grew out of the color discrimination tree. There was an effort on the part of some to equate African physical features with mental and moral superiority. So he says the same confused mentality that established Black as inferior and white as superior was evident in the effort to make Black superior and white inferior. So I know you hear this in the conscious community a lot. Yeah, I'm talking about the conscious community. I know brothers and sisters, Dr. Maat is talking about the conscious community. Yes, I am talking about the conscious community because we think we got special powers because of melanin. You hear brothers and sisters say, I have melanin, and I'm looking, and the people who, who are scientifically literate, we're like, most living organisms have melanin. So, you have in that community, you have folks, and I agree with Dr. Naeem Akbar. We're saying now, oh, because of our melanin concentration, we're more superior, than other people, or we're more likely. So even remember when the coronavirus hit. Remember, Black folks
yes,
actually thought, oh, well, I don't have to.
we're immune.
Yeah, I don't have to. I'm immune to coronavirus because I have melanin. And I'm like, wait a minute. You do realize white people have melanin too. They just have a different type of melanin. Most living organisms have melanin, and you have different types of melanin. You have something called pheomelanin and something called eumelanin. Eumelanin is the melanin that makes us brown. Pheomelanin is the melanin that makes them pale, and they have red hair and all that other crap. But they do have melanin. So, that's why I have a t-shirt that says eumelanin. I don't have a shirt that says melanated or melanin because that's melanin. You find that in soil, you find that in plants, you find that in all people. Like I said, most living organisms have melanin, but we have different types of melanin, and you guys can Google that. Pheomelanin, eumelanin, and I believe it's called something called neuromelanin.
I
So
believe so.
correct, yeah, I think it's like three
I believe
different
so.
types. Yeah, three different types of melanin. But you hear folks say that we're superior or dominant. That's another thing that I've heard. That that Black people are more dominant because of because we have melanin. Our genes would be more dominant than if we were to have babies with a non-Black person. Our genes would dominate their genes because of our melanin concentration, and that's not true. That's not scientifically true.
True.
And
I hear.
so, yeah, absolutely. And so there were a lot of social movements. I couldn't agree with him, that said, there was an effort to make now our physical features, to equate our physical features with mental and moral superiority. So we're superior because of, our melanin and all of this other nonsense. And
Right.
so he talked about that. And so then he says, he who remains ignorant of history is doomed to repeat history. So he's saying that, we had to know our history, else we're going to repeat it. And he says that the intensity and brutality of the slave making experience traumatized our social and human development. And then he says, though many writers have spoken on slavery, few scholars have addressed the continuity of behaviors established in slavery as a continuing aspect of African American psychology. And I know that Doc produced this book, I believe in the 1980s. That was the
Yeah.
first
1982.
draft of it. Yeah. And then it came out again in the 90s. But at that particular time, we didn't have Dr. DeJoy Dugary's work on the market, post-traumatic slave syndrome, because she speaks extensively on how slavery has impacted African American people. But
Yeah.
like I said, at this particular writing of the book, I don't think it wasn't available. But there are people who are definitely writing about, or who have written material on why or how slavery has impacted African American people. All right,
And I
and
want to read on page 25 of the first paragraph. The second factor
mhm.
is that the survival of the fundamental human initiative among African Americans, Africans, period, despite over 300 years of inhumane conditions ever experienced by any people in the current historical epoch, is indicative of human resilience at its best. In other words, African people, you are the most resilient people on this planet.
Absolutely.
All the things that we have been through, the people who were enslaved that were taken from Africa to America, the people that were enslaved who were taken from America to Central America, to South America, to the UK. You have survived all that. And I'll just go to the last sentence in that paragraph. African American, I'll just say African people exist more as a monument of human accomplishment than the remains of human destruction. So for us to survive this and not be completely insane, just think about that. We
Hmm.
should be completely insane from all the things that our ancestors went through, our parents went through, and that we've gone through, but we're not. We are reclaiming our minds, we're reclaiming our psychology, we're reclaiming our Africanness again. And this is the generation of change. Plain and
Hmm.
simple.
Hmm. Absolutely. I mean, I couldn't agree with you more. And I love how he talked about. He says that we brought when we came over here, we brought with us our character, our strength of character, our
Yes.
culture, and our heritage. You know that
Yes.
we brought that to the plantations with us. You know, and there's a book I have downstairs in my other library called Africanisms, and it talks about how we have characteristics that things that we do and
Yes.
characteristics that we possess,
Yes.
that we don't know, but is a lot of they have the same characteristics that our ancestors, possess, so we get it genetically, we get it culturally, it's passed down from generation to generation. And so, I
Absolutely.
want, yeah, a lot of that stuff we brought with us. And like you said, we brought resilience with us.
Mhm.
We should be dead. And I know white folks are wondering, God, Lee, I thought slavery would have killed them. But
Exactly.
it didn't. It
It made us
didn't.
stronger.
It made us stronger. We survived slavery. We survived the Reconstruction period. We survived Jim Crow. The civil rights movement, Black Power movement, the drug
Yes.
epidemic, mass incarceration. I know they're like, golly, you
Right.
know, but still we're here. Still we're here. Still we rise. You
Yes.
know, still we rise.
Exactly. And I'll go to the second to last paragraph
Mhm.
in the middle where it says, "It is to call our attention to an array of attitudes, habits, and behaviors which clearly follow a direct lineage to slavery. It is hoped that by shining the lights of awareness on these dark recesses of our past, we can begin to conquer the ghosts which continue to haunt our personal and social lives." Guess what? We are in the process of change. That's the whole reason to go through this book, to recognize it. And even as Dr. Mott has said before with her previous interview, it's time that we taught our children these things. Teach your children that way. The next generation will be taught the same thing, and they will be freer than we are today.
Hmm. Absolutely, and I love how Sister Alima on Malcolm X's birthday, a lot of people were putting up quotes on his birthday,
Oh yes,
and
yes.
so Sister Alima put up a quote that Malcolm X said. Malcolm X said, "Only a fool will allow his enemy to educate his children,"
Ooh,
and she said, "Oh, that's the one we don't talk about." You know what I mean? She said, "That's the one we don't talk about. We talk about all these other quotes, but
that's
what
right.
about the one where Malcolm X said, 'Only a fool will allow his enemy to educate his babies.'"
Yes,
And it's so true.
it's
It's so
true.
true. Carter G. Woodson said that Black babies are our most valuable possessions. He said, "Why on earth would you give their minds to another group of people to mold and shape, for their interests, for their advancement?" He said, "Why would you do that?" And he says that in his book, The Miseducation of the Negro. So I agree with you 100% that we have to take control over the education of our babies. I always say all of the conditioning, all of the entities that mold and shape the mind of our children, we have
Yes,
to control them. So that means controlling what our children watch,
yes,
okay? What they watch on TV. You got them sitting in front of Disney.
Oh
watching
my
Disney and Nickelodeon, Pixar, and all these other garbage movies that aren't teaching them to be proud of themselves, their ancestors, and their history. And granted, we all like to be entertained. I get it. We
God.
all like to be entertained. We want to take our babies to the movies to see things. But I mean, look, I'm looking at Disney, and I don't want to go on and on and on, but man, I mean, I'm looking at some of the stuff that they're introducing
Oh,
to our
absolutely.
children, to our
Yeah,
children through
absolutely.
animation, and it's very
Yeah.
sick. It's
Yes.
it's 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 very sick. So we definitely had to take control of what our children watch. I always tell folks, they say, "Well, what are your children watching?" They need to be watching "Tell Me Who I Am" by Kid Positive. That's a beautiful animation that they could watch.
Okay.
I'm going to plug Meltrek.
Yes. No.
I'm going to plug Meltrek.
And I want to say something. I've already given Miltrek to one school already, one predominantly black school. I'm going to give it to another school as well. Because again, starting with our children at an early age, teach them about who they really are. And Miltrek does that very, very well.
Thank you so much, brother. Thank you so much. So we got to start making sure that our babies, are watching things that mold and shape their minds, such that they operate in the best interests of us and not them.
Yes.
Even if and everyone can't homeschool, I get it. We all
Right.
can't, because I'm not in a position right now to be homeschooling. I mean, I had to homeschool because of COVID-19. I had no choice.
Yes.
But one thing that did make me realize is that it's doable. Initially I was like, I can't do it. I was talking to Sister Alima, because she's been homeschooling her babies for the past 2 or 3 years. And I used
Okay.
to say, I wish I could do it, but with COVID-19, we had to do it. We didn't have
Yes.
we didn't have a choice. We had to do it. The school shut down. And so I'm in here with my baby, and we're going over math and science and health and English language arts. And so COVID-19, with COVID-19, I realized that we had to do it. We had no choice. But it also means that we can do it. We can educate
Exactly.
our babies. And so we definitely got to take control of the educational process.
And
Go
the,
ahead.
and the plus one, what you're saying is that even if you have your children go to public school, guess what? Teach them these things on the weekend. Just like I did with my children. There are certain books that they had no choice but to read and to write a paper about. I need, I had all my children read each book by Dr. Naeem Akbar. And hey, tell me what this chapter means in your own words. I get it that you're 13 or 14, and it doesn't have to be perfect, but I want to understand what to see what you write out about that chapter. Read the chapter and tell me what you think that chapter says, and let's discuss it. And when you begin discussing things with your children, guess what you learn? You begin to find out how they think.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, right. Because your children are thinking about something and they're being influenced by Snapchat and all the other stuff and all the Disney shows that they're watching. And you just ask them what they think about something. Then you begin to have a dialogue with your child as they turn into a young man, as they turn into a young woman. And because you had that dialogue with them, you are now teaching them what it means to be a young man and a young man and young woman, to think for yourself.
Mm.
I can't stress that enough.
What you said was key when you said think for yourself. So I remember Sar Imhotep. He said we need to teach our children how to think, and how to think freely, and how to think critically. And,
Yes.
and that's one thing that the school system does not teach them how to do. They teach them how to remember and how to regurgitate,
Yeah.
right? How to duplicate, but they don't teach them how to think. And that is what we need to be doing in the home,
Ooh.
teaching our babies how to think.
So
Not
you're
what
talking,
not what to think, but really how to think.
right. And I tell my children the same thing. I want you to disagree with me at some point in time. If you're a teenager and you don't disagree with me as a father, I got a problem with that. That means that you're not thinking for yourself. I got a problem with that. You got to
Absolutely.
disagree with me on something. I got no problem with you disagreeing with me. But if you disagree with me, tell me why.
Tell me why.
That's
Tell
it.
me
If you
why.
disagree, tell me why. So even if you cannot educate your children on your own, do something on the weekend. Have them read a book. Have them teach your children. Have your children get Meltrek and have them watch the videos. Have them color. There's so many different things that you have options that we did. As you said before, we didn't realize that we had pre-COVID, but now that we do after the coronavirus, we realize that we can do it.
Absolutely. And Sister Juju, in the chat, she said African centered Saturday
Yes.
schools, and I couldn't agree with her more. In fact, Sister Juju, I announced last week that I'm in the process of partnering with Ryan Institute. You all can Google this institution, but Ryan Institute in Baltimore City is run by a husband and wife team, Dr. Dante Ryan and Miss Atonica Ryan. We're getting ready to purchase a school within a 5 mile radius from Morgan State University. And that's exactly what we're going to be doing, Sister Juju. We're going to offer an African-centered Saturday STEM school. So we're going to run it out of there. We're also going to offer summer camp, spring break academy, winter break academy. And so we're in the process of doing that. So yes, like you said, African center schools, and that's Saturday schools, and that's what the Asian people do. Yeah, in one of the counties here in Maryland is a county called Howard County, and what they do is the Asian community will send their children to the public school system, but after that they bust them over to their schools and they go to school. So we can definitely do it.
And I want to plus one what you just said. Again, Dr. Marimba Ani said, culture inoculates you from this madness. When we indoctrinate our children in African culture, it inoculates them from this madness that is. All of a sudden, when you indoctrinate your children in the African culture, you have less friction between the man and the woman. You learn how to court as a man. You learn how to court as a woman. You have the rites of passage on the weekend to learn what it is to be a man, to learn what it is to be a woman. Dr. Maat, awesome. Keep doing it.
Absolutely, but I couldn't agree with you more on that, brother. But do you have any closing words for this particular chat, particular part, because we're done. Next week we're going to be moving into, I believe that's part 2, liberation from mental slavery. But do you have any closing words on part 1?
Not really. Just the fact that we are in the process of, just like the title says, breaking the chains of psychological slavery. We just have to take our minds back. That's the bottom line. We have to take our minds back. We have to take the minds of our children back. We have to take the minds of our families back, because we are the ones that have to make the change. No one else is going to do it for us.
Not at all.
Yeah.
Not at all. And like you said, I mean, that was powerful. You said we had to take our minds back. And that's why Sister Alima and I founded this book club, The Resurgence of the African Mind. So the rebirth of the African mind, because right now you have a bunch of Negro-peans running around. And what I mean by Negro-peans are, you have black skin with white minds. And so, yes, we're black people, if that's what you want to call us, but we're African people operating with a foreign consciousness. And so that's why she and I, we named the book club The Resurgence of the African Mind. And we want to read books, as you said, books to take back our minds, because right now our minds have literally been shaped and molded by another group of people. And so we read a book called The African Personality in America by Dr. Kobe Kambon. Peace be upon his soul. He's an ancestor now. And he was so excited when Sister Alima and I reached out to him to read his book. But in that book, he talks about all of the different mental disorders that we suffer from. Oh, my mommy is listening. A family. You see Anna Scribner in the chat room. Say hi to my mama. I was getting on her. I said, Mama, whenever I go live, you never watch me. So she started watching my videos. And so she actually commented in the chat room.
Yes.
So Sister Juju, Brother Shimsu, you family, look at it. I have her on the screen right now. Hey, Mama.
All right.
Look, we're getting ready to close out. But thank you so much, Mama, for tuning in. But absolutely, we have to take back our minds, because we got to remember that, our psychology dictates our behavior. And if we want to operate in the best interest of African people, then we have to think like African people, which means that we have to re-Africanize ourselves. And a part of re-Africanizing ourselves is taking back our minds, reclaiming our history, reclaiming our heritage, reclaiming that proudness, reclaiming our identity, and moving like Africa, even reclaiming our spirituality. And I'm not going to start, Mama, because I know my mama listening, so I'm not going to start. But but absolutely. So anyway, brothers and sisters, so next week, please join us. We're going to be talking about mental liberation. Please join me on Tuesday, family. I have a vice president, the vice president of Food Line. Her name is Miss Millette. She will be coming on at 8 p.m. on Tuesday, Eastern Standard Time, to discuss unconscious and conscious bias. So family, please tune in. I'm going to, after I end this show, I'm going to create the broadcast. And once I create the broadcast, you can go on YouTube and set a reminder. It's going to be a very powerful show. And like I said, she's a vice president of a Food Line. I don't know if you have a Food Line where you are, brother Canoon, but we have a lot of Food Line. It's a supermarket chain of supermarkets, and so it's very popular in Baltimore and over here on the East Coast. But I have a VP coming on to talk about unconscious and conscious bias on Tuesdays at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So please, family, be sure to check that out. Also, this week I have Dr. Michelle Cornegay. She runs a research center at Morgan State University. She will be coming on, I believe, this Thursday to discuss electromagnetic radiation. And we're not going to talk over people's heads, okay? It's going to be, she's going to break it down, and we're going to talk about, is it harmful or isn't it harmful, right? Because people are fearful of electromagnetic radiation since they're rolling out 5G, and we're going to be seeing more towers. So a lot of people have some concerns about electromagnetic radiation. And so she's going to come on this Thursday at 8 p.m. to talk about that. I also have Dr. Jacqueline Badalora coming on July the 1st. We're going to be talking about whiteness. What is whiteness? What is white supremacy? How did that? I mean, she's a white woman. I gotta be real. She's a Caucasian one, but she's going to go in. So I have Dr. Jacqueline Badalora coming on, and I'm also bringing back Dr. Takao Kilimanjaro. He's going to come on July the 4th, and we're going to break down July the 4th and what it means to African people. What does the 4th mean to African people? Remember, Frederick Douglass said that in one of his speeches. He said, what does the 4th of July mean what does that mean to a slave? And so Dr. Kilimanjaro will be back on July the 4th. So family, this week, please tune in. I have a lot of heavy hitters coming on this week. If you're not subscribed to my YouTube channel, please go to YouTube, type in dr.maat. Subscribe to my YouTube channel, like my videos, thumb up my videos, and also go back into the archives and check out some previous conversations that I've had. I've had Dr. Julianne Marvell. She's been on. Anthony T. Browder, Dr. Leonard Jeffries. I just had him on last week. Who else did I have on, Brother Kaneem? I'm trying to think. Mama Ya Barudi. Brother Professor James Smalls. Professor. He came on twice. So go into the archives, family, and check out those powerful conversations. Brother Kaneem, do you have any last words, brother?
I just want to thank everyone for taking the time to listen. Thanking everyone for taking the time to read Dr. Naimba's work. Again, we are the generation of change. We are the generation of change, and we are in the process of changing it. And I'll just end with that.
Absolutely. Thank you, Sister Juju. Sister Juju said Michael Africa. Thank you, Sister Juju. I just had, and I heard what you said, brother, but she just threw it in the chat room. She said Michael Africa, and that was one of the brothers. Yes. He's a MOVE remember the MOVE organization in Philadelphia? His parents were locked up in the 70s. I believe he said in like 73 or 74. So he was with the MOVE, and his parents were, they were around during the 1985 MOVE bombing and all of that. And so he was on just last week. So family, please go into the archives and check it out. All right. So thank you for tuning in. I will see you next Sunday, Ram Book Club members. Peace and love.
Peace and love.